Good evening. My name is Aldo Portillo, and we're going to talk about weapon safety and how to safely clear a weapon to ensure that it's safe for storage or transportation. The very first thing that we're going to talk about is some weapons nomenclature so that you understand when I call out a couple of pieces about the weapon later on, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about here is we got our front sight, our rear sight, our slide, chamber, barrel. This whole bottom part is known as your frame. You have your trigger. This will be your trigger guard. And this will be your magazine well. Tang. And then on this side, you're going to have your magazine release button here. Right here, you're going to have a safety decocking lever, which not all weapons have a safety decocking lever. This model actually does. And I'll explain to you exactly what that does here shortly. And then this right here is your slide catch, which will either release your slide forward or lock it to the rear as it is shown here. And then this is your takedown lever. And your magazine, which is completely empty. You can see it has no weapons at all, or no ammunition. The very next thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about some safety rules that should be utilized when handling weapons at all times. The very first one is going to be treat all weapons as if they are loaded. Regardless whether you know it is loaded or you saw your friend load it, if a friend hands you a weapon, you want to make sure that it's clear, okay? It's your safety and the safety for those around you. Number two is you always want to keep your finger outside of the trigger guard. You'll keep it alongside the frame here, that's fine. That way if you were to trip, you wouldn't accidentally squeeze a trigger and put a round out, okay? Very, very dangerous. Always keep your finger outside of the trigger guard. Number three, you want to maintain proper muzzle control, which is basically always keeping the business end downrange, never pointing it at people or coming across their bodies, okay? If you need to do that, always down and around. And number three, you want to know what you're shooting at, what exactly your target is, and then what's behind that. So you want to ensure that there's nobody working on the back end of a building. You're not shooting at a target that's plywood, and there's people that are working on the back end, okay? You want to make sure that it's clear and there's nothing that will call that you're going to be able to hurt, okay? All right, so the very next thing that we're going to do, we know that this weapon is safe. It's unloaded. What I'm going to do is demonstrate loading this weapon with my magazine, which has no ammo again at all. So I'm going to take the magazine, insert it in the magazine well, seat the magazine, ensure that it's seated, push up on it. The very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push down on the slide release, which will allow the slide to move forward. Okay? So at this point, you can see that my hammer is locked to the rear. It's not safe at this point to put this weapon inside of my holster or in my safe in this condition, okay? If I was to drop this weapon, it could possibly go off. Or if I put it in my holster like this, by moving it or bringing the bail over, I could cause the hammer to go forward and shoot a round off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the safety decocking lever, push it down, and you're going to hear a click, and then I'm going to ride it forward, and you can see that this moves forward. I'll demonstrate that again in this direction so you can actually see the hammer ride forward. So again, I'm going to take the safety decocking lever, and I'm going to pull it down, and you're going to hear it click, and then I'm going to ride it forward. All right? So at this point, this weapon is safe to put in my holster or in my safe if I wanted to store it in this condition. From this point, if you wanted to clear this weapon, which you want to do, the very first thing you're going to do is maintain proper muzzle control, remove the source of ammunition. If there's a safety on your weapon, my weapon here doesn't have a safety. If yours does, always put it on safe prior to doing this. This one doesn't have a safety button, so I'm going to go to the next step, which is remove the source of ammunition by pushing the magazine release button, which will cause the magazine to fall out. All right, at this point, this weapon is still not safe. There's a couple more steps that we need to go through. Next, I'm going to take my non-dominant hand, put it on top of the slide while pushing up with my dominant hand on the slide catch release and sliding into the rear, which will cause it to lock in the rear. At this point, this weapon is still not clear. There's a couple more steps that we got to go through. One is we're going to look inside the chamber, ensure there's no brass. If this weapon was loaded after removing my source of ammunition, if there was a round in the chamber, it would be ejected. Do not try to catch it. Just let it hit the ground. You can pick it up once you're done, ensuring that this weapon is completely safe. So I'm going to look in here and ensure there's no brass, which there isn't, no brass. The next step I'm going to do is I want to look all the way through it, to the magazine well, and I want to be able to see daylight through it, which ensures that the magazine is completely out. Okay, at this point, this weapon is safe. If I wanted to store it in this condition in my safe, you could be safe to do this, or you can put it in your holster in this condition. If I was to put this weapon down, walk away and go have a conversation with some buddies or somebody, and I came back, I would want to go through that process all over again to ensure that this weapon was completely safe, because you're not sure if somebody came behind you and was looking at your weapon and may potentially have put a round in it or, loaded it. So you always, even though you made sure that it was loaded, if you physically leave it and move away and come back, you want to start the process all over again. Rule number 1, treat every weapon as if they are loaded. All right. So at this point, I can store my weapon in a safe or a lockbox if I chose to, or I can load it, ride the hammer forward, store it in my safe or a lockbox if I chose to, or put it in my holster for work or whatnot. Once you've ensured that it was completely clear and safe, you want to store all your firearms in a safe or in a lockbox to ensure that your children do not get to them. It would be catastrophic if they were to get it and play with it and it happened to be loaded. It could cause some serious problems. The other reason for doing that is to ensure that if for some unfortunate reason someone was to break into your house, they wouldn't be able to just take your weapon and use it in the commission of a crime, which could come back to haunt you later on, or you just may feel terrible if somebody was to get shot with your firearm because you failed to lock it or store it in a safe and secure place. So again, I want to go over those safety rules because they are super important. Number 1 is always treat every firearm or weapon as if they are loaded. Keep your finger outside of the trigger guard. Maintain proper muzzle control, which is always keeping the business end towards the range, never pointing it at people or anything you don't intend to shoot. And know your target and what's beyond it. And again, please store your weapons in a safe or a lockbox to ensure that your family stays safe or they don't get stolen and be used in the commission of a crime. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, please feel free to message me, and I will answer them as quickly as possible. And if I don't know the answer, I will find the answer and get it back to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much, and y'all have a great evening.